LATD Nation, what's good with y'all? We back in here with another video. So we done did a lot of segments so far. We talk about a lot of movies, TV shows.
That we have.
But we don't really talk about a lot of the older movies and TV shows. So we figured we're going to do a little old school review for y'all. And today we're going to be looking at the details of...
well, Transformers 2. Or Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, you know, of course, came out in 2009, directed by Michael Bay, starring Shia LaBeouf, Megan Fox, and a few others. Sequel to the original Transformers live-action movie, also directed by Michael Bay. That came out in 2007. Now, I feel like Transformers is a franchise that a lot of people our age is very familiar with. It was a big cultural phenomenon when we were young, when we were growing up. And I feel like depending on who you ask, it either has a very special or negative place in people's hearts. And when I was a kid, I still love the original Transformers. It's still one of my favorite movies of that era. I still think it's a great movie. I still think it told a decent story. I still think overall the original is probably the best of the Michael Bay movies, in my personal opinion.
It was Dark of the Moon for me.
Okay. But shit, maybe we talk about that at some point. Boy, Transformers 2 though, Revenge of the Fallen. Where do we even begin? This movie right here just
ass.
Pretty much. I mean, that's the end of the review. Yep.
All right, peace. I've been Jay.
But no, not for real though. Revenge of the Fallen. You know, I remember being a kid, being excited for this movie. I remember having the action figures and everything. You know, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen was like a big deal for like kids my age group, even though I was like 10, which is crazy thinking about it, because really, realistically, I had no business seeing a movie like that in theaters. And if y'all have seen this movie, which I'm sure y'all have had, which movie been out, movie be 20 years old soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time flying, bro. I feel old already, bro. You know how many kids call me Unc already?
That's what I'm saying.
They're like, hey, Unc, nigga, I'm 25. Like,
that's what I'm saying. I hate that. But hey,
anyway, let's keep going.
It is what it is. But yeah, no, Transformers 2, I remember being very anticipated. And when it came out at the time as a kid, I loved it, of course, because it was just more of the same. Transformers beating the hell out of each other.
But of course, we didn't know no better.
We didn't know any better, because I remember this movie. As years went on, I heard more and more rumblings that it was terrible, it was bad, but I really only largely watched this movie when I was a kid. Right. So it was like I never really went back to
see why
people thought it. Just always lived in my mind as a good movie. But over the years, just the things people have said about the movie and some of the old clips I ain't seen, I'm like, oh yeah, no, this movie is kind of crazy. So, you know, we was bored this past Sunday, wasn't really doing nothing. And we was like, hey, let's go ahead and get Transformers 2 a watch just to laugh, just to see how that's aged. And boy, oh man, this thing, man. I just think one of the biggest problems with this movie starting off the positives, I guess you could say. Shia LaBeouf was always fun in these movies, in my opinion. A lot of people criticize his performance for, you know, the yelling and the kind of whininess that he as a character often was, you know, Sam. But overall, I still think that he was a pretty strong lead in these movies, even though the material that he worked with wasn't necessarily good. Of course, the action, the set pieces were amazing. They still hold up to this day. And
that's really about it. My fault. I got a weird call.
Now you good.
My thing is with this movie, like you said, we were just bored watching it. It wouldn't. At first, I was liking it. I didn't see why a lot of people didn't like it, though.
I agree. At first, when you watch it, you're like, okay, yeah, no, it's not. It's low key cooking.
But the biggest thing that held this movie back, and I still feel this way, like even when I was a kid, the thing that held this movie back was the pacing. It was too long because they focused on so many unnecessary jokes.
Exactly.
I don't want to. If you've seen the movie, then you understand. But two dogs, a Decepticon that transformed into a white woman, stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? The one about the Decepticon turning into a white girl, that was more of a good plot line, but there was still like a joke that really, like overstayed his welcome, and a lot of them just didn't land for me.
Yeah, because
it just made the movie longer in retrospect.
Because like I told you, like as we were watching the movie, it was just like this movie definitely was a product of its time, because a lot of the stuff that's in this movie would never fly in this,
right?
Very quote unquote politically correct climate. A lot of the stuff in this movie would not fly today. A lot of this stuff is actually real, like extreme, like over the top, like crazy.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like,
yeah, because like some of the jokes that you mentioned, like with the dogs and just how I guess you could say it has a very sleazy feel to it. Like it feels very immature and just very coded and just entrenched and just, I don't want to say filth, because I don't want to sound like some I guess some pearl clutcher, but it's just like this. The movie does the most. It's just really over the top with some of the innuendos and things like that, and too on the nose too.
Right, exactly. Like it's just kind of dumb. But the thing is,
a lot of childish humor, which is crazy coming from
a
movie that was directed by a grown man. But hey, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. My thing is like, because the action set pieces were cool, they were fun. The story was kind of engaging, but like I said, all the dumb jokes just took us out of the movie. I'm sorry, because it started off really well. I started enjoying it. I didn't see why a lot of people hate it, and I still I do see why a lot of people hate it, but I don't really hate the movie. It's just more of a disappointment than anything, because it's just so dumb.
Yeah, it just is a very immature movie, just as it is directed. And I feel like the main thing about this movie is that it starts off relatively strong and engaging, with the idea being the Fallen. The Fallen was a prime, right?
He was a prime.
Yeah, he was one of the original primes. And what happened is that basically he got booted out because he essentially went against the prime's code of honor to never take life, take organic life or something like that. Like
right.
Not organic life.
Yeah, not necessarily human, but yeah, I got you.
And when he started, because eventually what happens is that, and spoilers, but the movie old as hell. Eventually what happened was he wanted to wipe out the human race. He grew to hate humans. But I really don't even know. Like, see, the thing is that this movie is just so all over the place plot-wise. It starts off relatively engaging. The idea of Megatron coming back and him having another master, that being the Fallen, but it just
truth be told,
very just jumbled and unorganized. No, you good. To begin with, Sam somehow has managed to have a piece of the Allspark in his coat pocket or whatever, jacket pocket, for like 2 years, and he touches it and he starts seeing visions and things in his mind, like
Cybertronian language,
symbols and things like that. But it begs the question of why this wasn't the case. And I remember Chris Stuckman saying this in his Hilariosity video. It begs the question of why is it that he wasn't affected like this when he touched the Allspark itself.
Right.
So it's just like, what?
Yeah, like, no, I agree. Like, it like, even when you mentioned like the Fallen hating humans, I'm like, ain't nobody asked your ass to come here. like, I don't know what you wanted me to say. Like,
they don't even explain why he doesn't like humans.
Right, y'all boy could have stayed at home chilling on Cybertron. Oh shoot, that got destroyed. Oh well, nigga.
Y'all could have found somewhere else shit to make y'all mark. I mean, I don't know why that was even the case. They don't explain why the Fallen hates humanity. He just wants to be. He's just evil just for the sake of being evil.
Essentially, yeah.
Which is in the vein of the '80s cartoon, but in the same breath, because you could come up with something better than that. And then it was like the matrix of leadership was the one thing that could defeat him, because Prime is the only. It's only a Prime that can kill a Prime, right?
Right.
And the matrix of leadership ends up being used to revive Optimus, because spoiler alert, he dies.
Earlier in the movie,
we sound all over the place because this is a very all over the place movie. It's so hard to even describe this movie's plot, because to be real with you, it feels like there really isn't a plot.
Nah, it's just dumb Cybertronian CGI fun, really. And that's all this movie is. Like, truth be told, I wouldn't give this movie a 19% on Rotten Tomatoes, I would probably give it like a 50 something.
I think more along the lines of the 30s, to be honest with you. There's very little. There's very little in this movie.
50. Yeah.
There's very little in this movie that I feel is redeemable outside of the handful of action sequences. Which to me, this movie also suffers in pacing in the sense that the stuff that you really are there to see feels like it's so few and far in between. It feels like for every action scene you get like 15, 20 minutes of exposition and dialogue where they're just adding stuff in that wasn't previously really implied or really plotted out. It just feels like, it's like I told you, when we were watching the movie, it just feels like they were writing this movie day to day as it was being directed, as it was being filmed.
Because lo and behold, Sam's hand gets broken somehow, but they don't really say why. They don't allude to why, and then you can just see a cast on his hand through the whole movie, through the rest of the back half of the movie when they meet Jetfire.
Yeah,
and it's just, I don't get it. Like I said, the Transformers themselves are cool, and I think that's why Transformers 1 that came out like last year around August, I think that's why that movie did so well, because they didn't have any human characters to kind of take the mind off of the exposition or take the mind off of the plot, essentially, because other than Sam, that's why Transformers 4 failed. I feel like that's why Transformers 5 failed. They were too busy focusing on the human characters that, truth be told, we didn't even care about to begin with.
Yeah, to be real with you, I feel like, to me, what's crazy, like thinking about Transformers 1, it's crazy to think that it took them over a decade to just give fans what we've been asking for since the very beginning. Nobody asked for human characters. Nobody really asked for any of that stuff. We really come to a Transformers movie for the Transformers. We don't come for a bunch of like human exposition and dialogue and jokes like what's in Transformers 2. And I think that's another one of the reasons why Transformers 2 was so bad, because it's just like it doesn't know its own audience. It's like you don't come to a Transformers movie to see jokes like that.
Right.
See all these innuendos and stuff like that. Like, you come to a Transformers movie to just watch Transformers fight. And
truth be told, with Transformers 1 being ultimately for like kids, that's a more mature movie than this one. Easily. And it don't have half the language and content that this movie, that Transformers 2 has.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
My thing is, like, with that movie, I love that movie, y'all. I'm sorry. I don't think it was my favorite movie of our top 25, I'm tripping, of our favorite movies of 2024. It wasn't on my number one, but it was definitely like at least like number 2 or 3. Because it just has a bunch of pacing and a bunch of great pacing and a bunch of like depth of character and everything. Like, you feel for robots, bro.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, you feel for these characters and all their empathy. Same here, but you don't feel for the characters in Transformers 2. You kind of just want them to go on about their lives.
To be honest with you, with Transformers, I now, as an adult, I was still invested in the Transformers story, but it's only because they're the Transformers. I'm not invested because they're giving me real reason in doing so. I mean, emotionally, they're not really giving me a reason to care, aside from the fact that, Optimus is my favorite Transformer. So, of course, I'm going to be sad that he died, but it's like, I'm not sad because they really gave me a reason to really be invested in Optimus's plight in this movie. At least they did a better job with that with the original.
Right, I agree.
They did a way better job making you empathize with the Autobots and their struggle in the original.
Right. And I do like how it always felt like the Autobots were always the underdogs too. I will give it that. But when they killed off Jazz, I was like, yeah, about this. I don't care how they do. Like, they always kill off the black man. But speaking of that, Transformers 2, like going back to what I said, said about how so much of what this movie and really all of these movies are to a degree would not fly today because mud flapping skids. I remember liking them when I was a kid. And truth be told, to a degree, I still do like them, to be real. I know that may not be politically correct of me to say, but I still like these two because it's just crazy how blatantly racist these characters are and how they're portrayed. And like I told you, for it to make it past
for them to make it past even the first draft of this movie script, let alone be animated, let alone make it, past test screeners. It's just crazy to me to think that these two managed to be as prominently featured. Because think about it. In the original, you have Ratchet, you have Ironhide, you got all of these other Transformers that get sidelined. Even Sideswipe. Sideswipe is in the movie
one time.
He's only featured for the very beginning. It's like, it's lame because Sideswipe comes in and Sideswipe is just,
damn, I'm good.
Literally, it's like Sideswipe does some crazy cool stuff, and then he's literally sidelined for the rest of the movie for Mudflap and Skids. These two, all they're doing is just fighting each other and just being the pure embodiment of racist black stereotypes.
Right. My thing is, the thing is, Sideswipe shows up more in Transformers Dark of the Moon.
Yeah.
But I was disappointed because he had a real dope scene in the beginning, cutting that Decepticon in half.
Facts. Like when he threw the blade.
Right. Yeah. And then he picked it up.
Yeah.
I'm like, and then he's talking about, dang, I'm good. I'm like, apparently not, because you're in the rest of this movie.
And like, that's...
Well, he is. He's just in car form the whole time.
It's like what I told you. It's like what I told you and Travis. Whereas Jazz was black, Mudflap and Skids are two niggas. And there's no other way to say it. Them two is niggas through and through. I said them two must be from the west side of Cybertron. They must be from the south side. Them two had gold teeth in their mouth and couldn't read.
And see, here's
like,
the thing.
Who thought this was a good idea?
I'm telling you now, bro. You had mentioned this on Sunday, but nah, there was no black people in that writing room, bro. Like,
couldn't have been. And if there was a black person in the writing room, they didn't care because they were getting paid.
Right, because my thing is, like, keep in mind, we're laughing at how dumb the crap is, bro. Like, we're laughing at them, not with them. Like, we don't. Because
how, not to interrupt you, but how do you have no black person tap Michael Bay on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you tripping?"
Right. I was like, I wasn't like offended. No, yeah, maybe just a little bit. Because here's the difference between Jet. Well, you said the difference between Jet, so never mind. But my thing is, like, it's just like tasteless stuff like that is what made the movie worse.
That's why I'm saying it appeals to the lowest common denominator. It has no shame at all.
Right. Like,
it's just so insanely lowbrow.
Bro, I'm surprised they didn't make a joke about having 40s and rollies on their wrists. Truth be told. Like, I'm being real. Like, it's that bad.
Oh yeah, no.
I'm really surprised they didn't make like 40 or more oral or something like that. That they,
In my opinion, it's got to be one of the most blatant just examples of just racist stereotypes and tropes in mainstream media, because even like going back to that era, I can't think of any other example of this, like where it was just this in your face, just this on the nose prominent. Like, I just cannot think of anything else that did something like this.
But I don't want to hear none of that in the comments or any of us on Instagram or nothing like that talking about, but y'all like the Boondocks though. Like, but here's the thing about the Boondocks. The Boondocks actually, takes everything that's negative about it and flips it on his head.
Because Boondocks, the thing about Boondocks is it's a social critique. Like,
exactly.
Boondocks is like self-aware. Like, it'd be one thing if
it's like they clone Tyrone.
Basically, like, it'd be one thing if Boondocks was kind of like, just ignorant for the sake of ignorance. But what it does, like, the ignorant stuff in there is kind of like social. It's criticized. Like, it's
right.
It's lampooned, basically.
Exactly.
Like it's playing itself up on purpose. It's not meant to actually be taken serious. Like, and that's why you got Huey kind of being there, just kind of like shaking his head at it.
Right. To be pretty much a voice for us.
Literally, yeah. That's basically what it's like. Huey is, kind of just shaking his head at like some of the stuff that he sees within our community and within our culture. So that is why Boondocks is just so much smarter and just much more savvy, because it knows how to critique itself but still be funny. It makes fun of itself, but it's still very smart, and it's a critique.
Right.
on society.
Versus Skids and Mudflap just being, oh, let's put them in there because, shoot, they like Jazz in the first one.
Because black stereotype.
Exactly. Like, because the thing is about Jazz.
Funny ass black stereotype, but black stereotype nonetheless.
But my thing is with like Jazz, though, here's the difference. Like, other than what Rodney said, the difference was Jazz has always been that one Transformer who's like coded to be black, essentially. Like even the original 1980s cartoon, he was played by this older black musician named Scatman Crothers. So he was always meant to be black, not necessarily as like a stereotype or as played to be a joke. He was always meant to be a good character, and even the same way in Transformers: Rise of the Darkspark, Fall of Cybertron, and War for Cybertron. Jazz has always been that one black character. That's why I've never been offended at him. You know what I'm saying? That's why I always love Jazz. He was always my favorite character, and that's what he was always meant to be taken seriously though. That's the thing, and that's why Skids and Mudflap. Why I kind of hate those characters to this day. Like because they just clearly just played up for jokes, bro, and it's disappointing, man. For real.
Basically, like I said, it's crazy how irresponsible they really were with it. Like. It's so irresponsible to present this in front of not only just millions of people, millions of kids.
Right.
So, not only do you have all these sexually inappropriate innuendos, you put this in front of kids too.
Right.
It's like, what were you thinking? Now, granted, 3, they definitely learned their lesson because Skids and Mudflap.
They are, but they're in for 1 or 2 scenes.
Yeah, they're not prominently featured, and then by age of extinction, they're not even there.
Nah, they're not there at all. Shoot, half the Autobots are dead in the Age of Extinction, except for 4 or 5.
The original lineup of Autobots that came to Earth in the first one, they're all dead by 4, except for, of course, Optimus and Bumblebee. Everybody else is dead.
Yeah, like we said, man. This movie, as the time went on, it just got worse and worse for me,
and
bro.
It drags.
I see why, and I'm sorry not to cut you off, but
good.
I see why you said this is a 30%. Because now the more that I talk about it, the more I'm starting to agree.
Because the thing about this movie is that it just drags so long. How do you get bored watching a Transformers? How do you get bored watching a movie about 2 warring robot factions from an alien world, like an alien planet? That should never be boring. How do you make something like that boring and drag on and just feel just like, dang, man, is this thing still going? I remember when we were watching the movie, I literally said to you, I'm like, man, Optimus, you need to make this speech and you need to just go ahead and get on with it, because I was just getting tired of watching it.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to that end battle, it doesn't even feel as climactic or as triumphant as it should. Because the movie that led up to it, it just feel like it fell flat at every point, twist and turn.
Exactly. It just stopped on it, and the ending itself just stopped on a dime.
It really did. There's hardly it feels like it was very rushed.
Exactly, man. But with that, I don't really got much else to say.
Shit, me neither.
Sure. With that being said, man, this has been Jay.
This has been Rodney.
We're LATD. Remember, y'all, look at the details. Peace.